Okay, so the session, of course, is why low season travel is so important, and why it's just better too, in so many ways. Just to start off, you've heard a little bit about me. I'm not going to bore you with my CV. I've been 25 years in the global travel industry with companies like Thomas Cook, Kuoni, TUI, MyTravel, Forward Keys, which is a data company, before eventually founding Low Season Traveler 2 years ago. I started to look into that. More importantly, and I think hopefully like a lot of people here, I've traveled, and I'm very, very passionate about travel and the advantages that travel brings to broaden our minds, to bring us closer to other communities around the world and different cultures as well. So yeah, I've traveled. I've traveled quite a lot. I'm one of these geeks, and I know it's very sad, and I don't know if anybody else out there is the same. But I tend to fill in these maps as to where I've been. Now, what's really tragic, I'm just going to point this out right at the offset, is I've traveled to over 80 countries around the world. And every time I've traveled, I've always traveled during the low seasons, mainly because I travel for events and for business and for fam trips in the tourism industry. And of course, the main reason that people send you on fam trips during the low season is because that's when they've got spare rooms and spare flights, of course. So I've traveled during the low seasons an awful lot. Something else you should know about me, I'm a data geek, although I like to think of myself as a data hero. I'm fascinated by data. And as a result of the work that I've done in the industry over the past 25 plus years, I've been studying the global travel data and trends with a geek-like fascination, to be fair. And that's why I wanted to share some of what I found with you when I was setting up Low Season Traveler and why it kind of got me concerned. So I would follow stats like this. So this is from the UNWTO. This was their tourism barometer report. They release it every year. I recommend you have a look through it. It shows where tourism is in the world, where it's been picking up, and all of that kind of stuff. And in 2019, we saw that there was 1.4 billion international arrivals. And everything was being hailed as really good in the tourism industry. Obviously, this is all pre-COVID. And we could see on this barometer where the tourism was, and every region in the world was on the up in 2019, which all sounded very positive. And the UNWTO came out and said that it's been the best ever year for tourism. And that kind of disturbed me a little bit, because it depends on what you mean by best. What's your measuring stick? If it's just purely on visitor numbers, then yeah, okay, it probably is the best. But is that the way we should be measuring tourism? Because all I was seeing was headlines like this, and I think we've all seen this over the past 2 or 3 years, about the so-called over-tourism, these tourism surges, which of course happened during the peak season months. So yeah, it didn't kind of sit right with me. We saw charts like this, which was the anticipated tourism growth to 2030 rather. Obviously, again, this was all done pre-COVID, but they were showing that all of their experts were predicting how many tourists we were going to have in the world by 2030. And they predicted that it was going to be 1.8 billion international arrivals by 2030. And that, these numbers, I don't know what do they mean to you? That I don't deal in billions, I don't deal in millions, if I'm being very honest. So I always think that these numbers are a little bit strange. But what I do know is that 1.5 billion was forecast to be hit in 2024, and we just hit that pretty much at the end of 2019. So that was a real cause for concern, because really we were looking at about 300 million international arrivals ahead of where we should have been. And I think that was a little bit of a cause for concern. Here you can sort of see it illustrated a little bit better. Just a quick point for all of you out there, and maybe you deal in millions and billions and you're not like me, but I don't deal in millions and billions. But what I always like to do to help people understand, the difference between a million and a billion, because it's hard to comprehend these big numbers. And it's a little fun exercise. If I was to say to you, go back 1 million seconds from this moment right now, do you know where you would be in time? And the answer is, you would be about 12 days ago if you went back 1 million seconds from right now, 12 days ago. If you were to go back 1 billion seconds from right now, you'd be in 1988. it's a huge difference between 1 million and 1 billion. And 300 million, which is the excess tourism that we're talking about seeing in 2019, if you were to go back 300 million seconds from right now, it would be 10 years actually. So just to put a little bit of a perspective, when we see these big numbers, they are truly, utterly huge. And then we see the end result of those numbers in our different resorts. So we're going to see, pre-COVID, we were headed to see 2 billion before 2030. I think COVID obviously has put that into question, but the principles will absolutely remain the same, because when we come out of COVID, there is going to be the mother of all tourism surges. A variety of institutions have come out with data supporting this, including TripAdvisor, Forward Keys, Kiwi.com. They're all saying there's going to be the mother of all tourism surges, because everybody wants to get out of where they are. And, I'm guilty. I'm one of them as well. I want to get out too. So the relentless march of tourism has been going on for, well, do you know what? It's been going on since the end of the Second World War. We've seen more flights around the world, more international arrivals, more economic growth as a result of that tourism, which has been great. And for the most part, as an industry, what we learned is that basically tourism just goes up on the increase. If you're a Mediterranean country, you open up on the 1st of May, you get more visitors than you had the year before, just because you do, and you close on the 31st of October, and the job's done there or thereabouts. You make most of your money in your peak summer months, and everybody's happy. There might be a blip. Global financial crisis is the one that you can see on the screen there. In 2008, 2009. It was just a very small blip. The march of tourism went on. And I think the fear or the hope, depending on what side of the fence you sit on, is that with COVID, you've got the mother of all drop-offs in terms of tourism. But it quite possibly could just carry on the same trajectory that it was on before. And if it does, I think it's a bit of a mistake. But there we have it. But anyway, all of this excess tourism led to I suppose a fall off in the quality of tourism that we were able to appreciate. So this is the kind of stuff that it led to. Your dream trip to Venice. I've never been to Venice, and I must admit, when I look at pictures like this, I think maybe I've missed the boat. Maybe I've literally missed the boat to go to Venice, because that's not an experience I want. That's not how I want to experience Venice, and I'm sure it's not for a lot of people. Want to relax on the beach? I mean, geez, that just looks like hell on earth. Certainly, I don't want to be anywhere near that. I should point out as well, by the way, I hate crowds. That's one of the defining things about me. I can't stand crowds and stress, and it makes me cringe. So when I look at these pictures, I find them hard to look at. This is Iceland, again, famously suffered with over-tourism. Actually live in these houses. This is their home. This is where they bring up their kids, and they're thronged with that many tourists all the time. So the impact on people's lives in communities is negatively affected. And I would say the tourism experience for all of these guys here, I mean, I don't know, are they having fun? I don't know. It's up for you to decide. Let me know in the comments. I don't think it looks like fun. Angkor Wat, somewhere else I've never been to, and I look at pictures like this and I think, holy Lord, no way does that look appealing to me. And what I find interesting about all of these photos is, these aren't the photos that you see on the website for that tour operator that's trying to sell you a trip to Cambodia or to Santorini. These aren't the photos that they show you. Another one here, this is a brilliant picture of the Louvre in Paris, and on many people's bucket lists to actually see the Mona Lisa. Well, if that's as close as you're going to get to the Mona Lisa, I don't know if you can even see it on your screens. It's right there in the far corner. Again, is that the experience that we as a tourism industry are providing? Is that the experience that people want? I don't think so. So the travel and tourism industry, we've had a penchant for telling mistruths. I think probably that's how the former president of the United States would say it. And I think we need to start being a little bit more truthful. And I think it's a big issue in the industry is one of trust. And So, this is some images now of how we have inspired you to travel over recent years. These are the images that you see, in the brochures, on the websites, on the blogs, all of this kind of media. And you see images like this saying, hey, come to Athens, come and see the Parthenon. It's wonderful. Stretch of beach, actually. And again, this has been used in promotional pieces that I've seen quite a lot to entice people to northern Spain. This is the Ponte della Paglia in Venice. Beautiful bridge. Again, looks quite quiet. Looks quite serene. And that's what we sold the destinations to you on. We sort of said, look, that's what it is. And this is what sort of concerned me, is because when I was setting up Low Season Traveler, I wanted to be, unlike any other travel organization out there. We're only going to sell the low seasons, and how we'll differentiate ourselves is we will have pictures that are only taken during the low seasons. And what I soon realized is that every other travel company out there is taking pictures taken during the low seasons, even though 70% of the visitation usually, is arrived during the peak seasons. And this is the experience that they actually have. So they were sold to via the last pictures. That's peak season Athens in the Parthenon. That's the experience that you're getting. They sold it to you by showing you that beautiful image, but that's your reality. This is the reality for Maya Bay. It had to close at the end of 2019 for a full year just to allow nature to try and reclaim back a little bit of what it was. It was utterly destroyed. The corals were destroyed, and it was seeing that many tourists every day with stacks of boats there. Again, that was the experience that they got, but what they were promised on the website was the images that you saw previously. This is Levant Beach during peak. Operators and travel agents, the 70% that go during the peak season, that's what experience they're going to get. So why aren't you showing us a picture of what we actually get when we book? It's dishonest. It's absolutely dishonest, because we don't know what we're going to get until we get there, and we have to trust our travel partners to be truthful with us about it. So that's a kind of a concern that I saw along the lines with over-tourism. Was it just highlighted to me how at times dishonest we have been. I put myself, by the way, there as well. We have been with consumers, and I don't think it's good enough anymore. So what I wanted to do then at this juncture is give you 13 reasons as to why we should embrace low season traveling. And of course, we've got a wonderful panel just joining me after this to help us learn a little bit more about these. But these are the 13 key reasons as I see it. By the way, I chose 13 deliberately, really, because most of these lists are top 10. And, low season travelers, I think we're the kind of people that like to, we literally go against the flow. So if everybody's going to one destination, we'll head to a different destination. If everybody's turning left, we'll turn right. And if everybody's doing top 10 lists, we're going to do a top 13 list. So that's why we've got 13, even though it is an unlucky number. Let's hope it's not unlucky this time. So first of all, the really obvious one for traveling during the low season, it's less crowded. And nobody really likes crowds, but if you're looking for a little bit more peace and tranquility, and if you're looking to cut literally and metaphorically your own path in life, then low season travel is the way to go. We get better service as low season travelers, and we really do. I've worked very closely with the hotel industry, and there's been a number of studies that highlight that the service levels in your average hotel, they tend to drop off the closer you get to full capacity, obviously, because there are fewer staff to guests ratio. When it tends to be a little bit more empty, you tend to get much better service, and that's the same in cafes and restaurants and everywhere else. Because people have got more time for you, the staff have got more time for you. So when we travel during the low season periods and the off-peak periods, we get better service. No queues or waiting. I mean, who enjoys standing around in a queue? For me, when we travel during the low seasons, and you go to Rome or wherever in the low season, you cannot beat the feeling of walking past markers that say 3 hours waiting time from here, and you're just zipping straight to the front and going straight in. That's a really nice feeling. But nobody enjoys queues and waiting around. And also it takes up our time, and our time is incredibly precious and valuable, more so than money, actually. We experience more in less time. partly because we're not queuing all of the time for all of the different attractions, but because of that lack of queuing and because we can fit more in. So we do tend to experience more in the destination than we would otherwise be able to if it was during the peak season. And that's a good thing because we want to experience as much of the destination as we possibly can and get underneath the culture of the destination. We have less competition for facility, the use of the facilities straight away, and that's a really nice positive boon as well. Number 6, we enjoy more interaction with the locals. Because there's a lack of crowds, the locals tend to have more time for the visitors that are there and time to engage and to speak with the visitors. So we get that interaction with locals. And low season travelers, I think generally, we're kind of culture vultures. We want to understand truly what it's like in the destination, and how you find that out is by engaging with the local population, and that's something that we really want to do, whether it's eating in a local restaurant or going to a local farmer's market. We avoid the travel chaos. Again, hard to believe right now when all of the airports are so quiet and empty, but on any given typical year, during the peak months, and when we're talking about the Mediterranean and Southern Europe countries, we're talking about those sort of 6 summer months, there's an incredible amount of pressure on the flight schedules. Now, none of us enjoy airports at the best of times, let's be absolutely honest, and I used to work with airports very closely, so I'm embarrassed to say that, but it's true. Airports are they're like a glorified car park. They're just how you get to the destination. It's a rite of passage. You just have to get through it. None of us particularly enjoy it. I always judge a good airport experience by the fact that if I can't really remember the airport experience, it must have been good, because I shouldn't have to remember it. Usually the only way I'll remember it is if I'm delayed there, if I'm hanging around. And all of that kind of stuff happens during the peak season. But also the flight schedules get really busy during the peak season, and if anything happens to one flight, it has this colossal knock-on effect to all of the others, and you have a departures board like the one that you can see on your screen. So we kind of avoid all of that because when we travel during the low season period, we tend not to get the travel chaos. We have increased security. That's the most basic of stuff. Again, it's linked to the lack of crowds, but pickpockets rarely come out when the streets are empty. That's just a fact. We pay less for flights. Again, kind of obvious, I suppose, but the likes of Ryanair, Volotea, Vueling, all these kind of airlines, they don't have a smaller fleet size in the low season. They've still got the same number of aircraft all year round. But they're just more challenged, obviously, during the low season periods. They might change the routes that they do and maybe the frequencies, but they still have to be flying their aircraft. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but when an airline, part of an airline operation means that for every minute the aircraft is on the ground, like you can see in this photo here, the airline's losing money. They're only making money when they're flying, which I know sounds crazy because, you've got fuel burn and everything else. But assuming that usually they have 80% capacity, they lose money when they're on the ground. So they need to keep flying, therefore they tend to reduce the prices. So we pay less for flights, which is very, very good. We also pay less for accommodation. Again, it's simple supply and demand. The demand increases in the peak season, the prices go up. The demand decreases in the low seasons, the prices come down. That means we get to stay in 5-star hotels for 4-star and lower prices, which is wonderful because we get better value for money, which is fantastic. Our experience is more unique. This is one of the key ones to me. I should have put this at number 1 or number 13 rather than number 11 stuck in the middle. But we get a more exclusive experience. Approximately 30% of all travelers, and it's probably less than that actually, get to see, for example, the awesome power of the surf at Nazare when it's truly pumping. And that's because 70% of all travelers to the region visit during the peak season months. They don't get to see that. They haven't seen it. Most people have not got to see Nazare pumping at the full size, and these are the biggest waves in the world if you're not familiar with it. And that's an experience that very few people get to see. We get to experience something that's pretty unique that most of our peers haven't seen. And that's one of those things I love about low season travel. I love to say, I went to this destination, but I went during the low season. And if they went during the peak season, I had a completely different experience. And it wasn't less of an experience, it was just a different experience. And that's really key, I think. Our presence is truly welcomed when we travel during the low seasons, and that's because we're visiting and spending cash at a time of the year when the local community actually needs it. During peak season, they've got all of the tourist crowds there that are spending money, the economy's booming, everything else. During the low season periods, many communities around the world and tourism communities, they really need tourism at that time, and they need the tourism cash. So when we travel during the low seasons, our presence is truly appreciated. And finally, and not the least, we get to feel good about our tourism. We get that warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that we are engaging in one of the most responsible and sustainable forms of tourism that there is. And that kind of feels good as well, because, I've heard it said recently that we live in the era of guilt. And that struck a chord with me because, these days we feel guilty about the environment. We feel guilty about pollution. We feel guilty about traveling. If I go to the local shop and I go in the car, I feel guilty. I think, really I should have walked it. But, I was being lazy, or it was actually because of time that I took the car, but I feel guilty about it. And if I get my coffee cup, if it's a disposable one, I'm thinking, is this really a good thing? We feel guilty about so much these days. We truly live in the era of guilt. And for me, low season tourism and low season travel means that it's just one less thing to feel guilty about. If I go during the peak season, I am going to feel guilty that I'm contributing to over tourism. I'm contributing to surges in tourism that can be damaging to the local communities. If I travel in the low season, my presence is a force for good. And that makes me feel good, basically. So look, now is the time. I know, we've got COVID that's hit us, but, travel is going to come back, and it's going to come back in the same way. And, I think that when we look at the trends these days, people are looking for more sustainable travel, responsible tourism. They're looking for cultural heritage. Cultural heritage makes up something like 60% of people said that they want a cultural heritage aspect to their travel. Cultural heritage is one of those things that it's there all year round. Those buildings are there all year round, not just in the peak season. And when we talk about cultural heritage as well, and we'll get onto this in the panel, that's food, that's wine, that's music, that's the Portuguese fado, it's dance, it's everything, and it's there all year round. You don't need to be there in July and August. Adventure travel, slow travel, travel without the crowds, it's all there to be experienced during the low seasons. So I'm getting towards the end now. You'll be glad to know how I'm doing for time. Oh, pretty much spot on. So where do travelers go to find out where is the low season? Where is it the low season in April or in July? If I've got a week coming up in May, where is it? I want to go during the low season, but where in the world is it low season in May? If I Google low season Turkey or low season Portugal, I'll get a few articles. But what if my starting point is I know the month I want to travel, and I want someone to show me where in the world is it low season? Where's my options? Why is it the low season? Why would it be a great time to visit? Basically, where can I find honest, objective information about the pros and cons of traveling, frankly, anywhere in the world during the low season? And that's why we created Low Season Traveler, to be that central resource for low season travelers. A very, very small niche community, but nevertheless a very rapidly growing one. This is a warning. Shameless, utterly shameless self-promotion in the next 2 slides. Forgive me, but we got to do what we got to do during these times, right? This is the Low Season Traveler portal. It's full of beautiful images taken during the low seasons, I should point out. I would urge you all to take a look at it and let me know what you think. Give us your feedback. We have destinations like, the Algarve, where we've got different, insider tips on the low season, good to know about the low season, food and drink to experience during the low season, all kinds of fun stuff. We also run a podcast every week. We've just started our second series. In fact, we start it next week, which has got 15,000 unique listeners. So our community is growing all around the world in 120 countries. We've had a few on Portugal actually, so please do check them out. It's available on iTunes and on Spotify. And if you'd like to join our community, please do feel free to join us. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, you name it, we're there. We're on Clubhouse now as well. and it's just search out for Low Season Traveller, and we're there. If anybody would like to reach out to me separately at the end of this, obviously, please let me know and we'll join a room or whatever, a network at the end of this. But you can also contact me on jed@lowseasontraveller.com if I can be of any help whatsoever.